So I think the capital markets, our challenge right now is to get Vogel and Summer built correctly. And I think that will provide more confidence to the capital markets and to boards that you can do this, and then to take advantage of the standardization to actually reduce the overall cost. And I think initially we're going to only build, at least in this electricity market and natural gas market, probably the initial builds are all going to be in regulated states. Oh.
What are the key lessons learned from Fukushima Daiichi, and how will they affect the operation of the U.S. nuclear fleet?
I think the things that make the most sense right now that we're looking at are, first of all, multiple units. Okay, so after 9/11, when we basically decided we needed to be ready to deal with the loss of systems if an aircraft hit a plant, we were required to put the capability to have diesel-driven pumps to put water in the core, because we're not going to have power, and maybe even our current systems don't work. That was done looking at it, first of all, from just aircraft impact, and it was done looking at it from a single unit standpoint. So we need to look at this more holistically on multiple units. That means probably some more equipment on site, and we're also going to be looking at whether it makes sense as an industry to do stuff that they do now for transmission problems, where they have off-site response capability. And we will look at whether it makes sense to have some regional or some form of off-site response capability in addition to what we have on-site, to bring both equipment and people to help when you have a major event. Obviously, another area that everybody's looking at is how long do you need your batteries to last, so you have instrumentation and other things if you do lose power. So battery life or battery recharging, and there's some simple things there. We can basically shed load on the batteries right now and buy a lot more time on battery power. Okay, so we won't keep everything we thought we wanted on it. We'll keep critical instrumentation and other things, and then we can do battery charging. It doesn't require us to have breakthroughs in battery technology. We may follow the auto industry on that and get some great breakthroughs down the road. I think the other areas that we're definitely looking at is instrumentation for the pools, to make sure that we have the best information available. You have a lot of time on the pools to put water in. Okay, it's not that, my God, I got to rush to the pool real quick. There's a lot of water over the fuel in the pool. It takes a long time for that water to get out, you know, and to steam off if I'm not circulating. So we have time, but you want instrumentation. Maybe we want to do something else with the pools on spraying. Obviously, the flooding is an area that we're looking at, and I think we'll do walk downs and look at flooding and stuff like that. So it's enhancements that we're looking at. After 3 Mile Island, I think, in the simplest terms, I think we went from an industry that had tremendous confidence in the defense in depth of our design to an industry that understood that operational safety was as important as design safety. And that's when we went to plant-specific simulators at every site, changed our whole training programs. I mean, the operators at our site are in training every 5th week. They're in training more than airline pilots, doctors, or policemen. I mean, we're in training all the time, okay? And they're training on stuff that Fukushima related. They're training on transients and accidents that you don't see when you do a normal operation. So I think what we're going to do is look at how we improve operations. We've got emergency operating procedures. We have stuff we put in place that we call severe accident management guidelines after Chernobyl to give our operators a better upfront thinking about what to do in a severe accident. And then we put in place another set of procedures after 9/11. We got to figure out how to integrate those better and probably train on them in a more holistic way. So those would be the areas that right now we're actually looking at as the near-term stuff that makes good sense. Paul?
Marv, I'm going to move off some of the things that you've been talking about into a sort of a fringe area, but one that I think is important, which is the public, the media rights for the public or broadcast to the public, etc. There's been an increased amount of activity of late in commenting about staff at NRC and about disparity, let's say, of feelings of the commissioners. Actually, one article that I read talked about there being a definite split among the commissioners on what's going on. And maybe some more of that will happen. Maybe it won't. But we do have both the NRC meeting and then the coming out this week, and then the report on the Blue Ribbon Commission, whatever you call it. Have you done, or do you intend to do any polling and public outreach other than telling everybody that everything is wonderful, everything is safe, etc., asking questions about what do people actually feel, not just opinion makers, but down in the grassroots, because that's going to change everything that comes up about these things. And what are you doing to talk to media about the fact that, or maybe you can't do it, maybe somebody has to be somebody else that does it, but where are we in that area?
Let me maybe parse this call and tell me if I actually hit on what you were asking, in at least a bit. As far as the commission, the strength of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission from our perspective is the diversity of expertise, opinion, and collegiality that they have. They have 4,000 people on staff. It is by far and away the technically most competent staff we deal with in any Washington arena. They're technically very competent. They're always, I don't think there's an ounce of daylight between what the NRC staff wants and what our people at the plants want, which is to operate safely. There's different roles and responsibilities in how you get there. So I think it's important to recognize the competence of the staff. I think the commission is at its best when they work together. We think it's at its best when they have 5 of them, to be honest, when it's a full commission and they get the diversity of experience on them. I think it's important, I've been asked this question, don't you think the credibility of the commission is important? Obviously it's important. Public confidence and political confidence looks to the independent regulator. A dramatic difference between us and Japan is we have a very competent independent regulator, and their regulator, and I don't know enough to tell you details, is part of their Ministry of Industry. It's not independent. May do a very good job, I don't know, but there's a real difference. So to cause question on the commission, I think it's critical that they're collegial, it's critical that they're effective, and it's critical that they're credible. And we would like to see them always stay there. I think on the question of the public, we are doing polling with the public. And what we're learning is they want us to take lessons learned. They really want us to understand that. There are things that they don't deal well with. The public doesn't deal well with talking about radiation. They basically think radiation from power plants is bad. They don't necessarily like radiation from other things, but they'll accept it from medicine. They'll actually accept it in some sort of food processing. But radiation is a tough thing to educate and communicate to the public on. But when we've asked our person that's doing this, one of our radiation folks said, well, what about when you compare it to a banana? How much you get more radiation from a banana than you do, because of the potassium in a banana, than you do from a nuclear power plant? And his answer was, all you do is make them afraid to eat bananas. So, so I think we're looking, our big thing right now, to your point, Carl, is we would like the companies, and they are, to do more outreach in their areas, not just to their neighbors, but beyond their neighbors in their states. We as an industry always do better when people visit our plants and meet our people. I don't care if it's the most adamant anti-nuclear person to the most adequate supporter. We won't move an anti-nuclear person to be a supporter, but they'll have a different impression if they go to a plant, they meet the people, and they see the facility. It never hurts us, and that's one of the things we're pushing all the time. Now, we can't do it from Washington. You got to do it out where it's local.
Well, New York and Vermont would be good places to start.
Okay.
Marvin, when you think about new plant development, what do you see as the biggest risks to either the COL process for the plants in Georgia and South Carolina, or the design certification for the AP1000 and other potential designs?
I think we're at the point on the AP1000 where you're basically now, I hope, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and putting the ribbon around it. I mean, they've answered all the questions. NRC is completing, basically finalizing it. So I don't see a lot of risk on the AP1000 design cert. They're almost through. I think on the COLs, I would also kind of say I don't see big risk. The main thing you got to get through on the COLs now are the mandatory hearings. And the risk on the mandatory hearings is they've never done them before. So it's not that, oh my God, the mandatory hearing's a terrible thing, or it's you know, about to go off the cliff. They've just never done it before. So the risk is I haven't done it, and therefore I could think of all kinds of bad things, but I think the intent the commission has is to get through it in a responsible way. I mean, the thing on new plants is you don't have I mean, they're out there building. I mean, there's 3,000 people working at those sites. They're building, but there's no fuel on site. There is no risk to public health and safety for 4 or 5 years. So if there's something that someone thinks of that you ought to be kind of doing a little differently, you have time to do it. So I don't want to say there's no risk to getting the COL or the design cert, but I think the risk is minimal right now. And I think that the task force report sort of demonstrated that, where they said Fukushima should have no impact on the current design certs or the issuance of the COLs.
Hi. You had mentioned that I guess there was a vote last week with 2 commissioners.
2 commissioners voted, yeah.
What exactly did they vote on, or not on, but what did they vote for? And also, if you could name the 2 commissioners again.
Yeah, sure. Each commissioner will vote. The way the NRC process works, each commissioner votes. Then they put their votes together, and they figure out where there's common ground. Hopefully there's a lot of it. And they issue what they call a staff requirements memorandum, which tells the staff what the commission as a whole now wants them to do. Okay? So last week, 2 commissioners, Commissioner Magwood, who's a Democrat, and Commissioner Savinicki, who's a Republican, both voted. In general, both of their votes called for going forward and involving the NRC staff, the broad staff, not taking any of the recommendations right now and implementing them. In Commissioner Magwood's vote, he basically said, can you come back to us in 20 days or so and tell us if you see some priorities that we should focus on? But fundamentally, and I'm summarizing vote sheets that are about 2 pages long in each case, they basically said, get back in process now. The task force did a good job. The plants operating are safe. They've identified a bunch of areas that should be looked at. Let's get the NRC staff doing their diligent analysis. Let's get stakeholder input so we understand what others think about them, and let's move forward. And again, Commissioner Magwood said, and try and come back to us in a reasonable period of time, and I think it was 20 days if I remember right, and are there some priority areas we should look at? I think that's where they'll end up going. I mean, if I were to summarize what I think will happen, is the commission as a whole is going to say, go forward, staff, take the task force report, put it into a process that actually does much more rigorous evaluation of what they're recommending. But also, there are some things, I've mentioned things to your question that we think make good sense to look to do sooner rather than later. Those things are going to be relatively obvious to the NRC staff too. And they're going to come back and tell the commission, we think these 4 or 5 things or 3 or 4 things are things that we should look to do. And then what sort of regulatory footprint do you want to put on that? Does that help?